At least 120 people have been killed in gun and bomb attacks across Paris. French President François Hollande has declared a state of emergency. He called the terrorist attacks an act of war and blamed Islamic State. Joining us on Viewpoint is Oleksiy Melnyk, the co-director of Foreign Policy and International Security at Ukrainian think tank Razumkov Center. Welcome to Viewpoint.
Thank you for the invitation.
So why do you think so many people were targeted?
I don't think that the terrorists set any particular objective for killing such a number of people, but in general, any terrorist attack does not care about the number of people killed. The more the better, how cynic it sounds, and it's just amazing that they've been able to achieve their objectives so skillfully. It looks like well-planned operation.
I see. French President François Hollande has blamed Islamic State in his TV address. Would you say that this is so?
Well, most probably. At least what can be said for sure, that definitely there is an Islamic, let's say, source of, because the way it was done with suicide bombers and this absolute ignorance to people, to the innocent people, that's kind of tactics that usually used by the Islamic extremists. Either it's ISIS or Al-Qaeda, I don't know.
They say that if this is ISIS, then it's probably because of France's involvement in airstrikes in the Middle East. Do you think now that these attacks have happened, do you think France will slow down its involvement in the Middle East or will increase its intervention?
Well, it's hard to predict what kind of actions will be taken. I would probably see two different, let's say, kinds of regarding the time and nature of actions. First, of course, the French government and the international community have to show to people, because people are scared, people concerned, and something has to be shown very quickly, that the government is ready to act and the government is ready to do everything possible. But this
Hollande has actually had meetings, security meetings, and British Prime Minister David Cameron as well.
I would say it's just the meetings is not these kind of actions. I'm talking about rapid actions like very strong statements that they will be punished and perhaps some more bombings. But I think that the long or mid-term actions are still to be planned, and whether it will be an increase of involvement in Syria or I don't see any option that France would decide to withdraw. Rather, we should expect more actions of the Western coalition in Syria in order, let's say, to diminish any possibility of this kind of attacks to happen again.
France has over 5 attacks this year alone, terrorist attacks. Do you think that French President François Hollande should do more to ease the public for security and to ease the kind of panic that may be spreading?
Well, what I saw on the TV, as an expert, not just paying too much attention to people suffering, which is of course important, but I had this impression that actually the security services and the whole, let's say, state machine has been working pretty well, as it can work in the current situation, because of course there was panic, but at the same time there were some good signs of order. And what President Hollande can do, I think what he has done, what he said already, that's something that any leader of the Western state should do. He appeared immediately in public. He immediately tried to explain and to promise people that everything possible would be done. But again, we should be aware that there are certain limits. That we can't guarantee 100% security.
What's your take on the situation in terms of security right now in Paris? Over 1,500 military personnel had been deployed right after the attacks, and more personnel were deployed to the government buildings and the parliament.
The worst-case scenario, if something like this can be repeated, because again, then it will really undermine the trust in the government. But with the increasing level of security, and we saw it, by the way, when was the last these kind of attacks on Charles de Gaulle. But again, the security measures has been increased already, and I would expect that there's certain, let's say, assurance or kind of security can be provided for during the next few days. Again, it's naive to expect that the next attack will happen in Paris. It can take somewhere else, because actually this is a tactics. As we saw from Paris, there was some separate attacks first, and one of the intentions is kind of this very general approach that to draw attention to different place which is not the major target.
Yes, there were bomb attacks and there were gun attacks at the stadium where Hollande was there himself watching a friendly match between Germany and France.
So my point is, it's not just to focus all the security, all the efforts on Paris itself, because something can happen in different part of France or different part of the world.
Do you think that French security services overlooked something?
Well, again, as I said, there are certain limits, because we can guarantee 100% security. I mean, the best services can provide, I would say, or prevent something like 90 or 95% of the cases, but the rest is still enough. And we saw that France did probably everything during the last probably 5 months, increasing presence of troops on the streets. But you can't leave, or you can't keep this state of emergency indefinitely.
Right after the attacks, Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko offered his condolences and said that Ukraine is ready to provide the necessary support. He also laid flowers at the French embassy in Kiev. But a lot of social media users were angered by this, saying that they weren't happy that they saw so much attention being drawn to a killing in France, terrorist attacks in France, by the Ukrainian leadership, that so much attention was being paid to them. And when at home there's still a lot of questions about who is responsible for the Maidan killings last year, and a lot of people feel like not enough has been done and it has been mourned enough, those victims. Do you agree with this?
Yeah, I don't support this kind of position, that too much attention. There can't be too much attention. And of course, the questions that people put forward, I mean, for our government not doing enough to take care of the Ukrainian people have nothing to do with this tragedy that happened in Paris. But coming back to our issues, of course, there are a lot of well-justified accusations against our own government. You mentioned already Maidan and the issue of corruption. And by the way, one of the main questions being asked nowadays, how these people could get into Paris with Kalashnikovs. And this is an issue of security. But in our case, it's also an issue of effectiveness of our security services. It's an issue of widespread corruption, which still not been tackled properly by the Ukrainians, despite many promises. And why I'm talking about corruption? Because we're having so many, let's say, I would say, thousands of weapons now in the east of Ukraine. If we can't stop this flow of weapons to the rest of the territory of Ukraine, and I wouldn't rule the possibility that one of these Kalashnikovs provided by Russian Voyentorg would fire somewhere in Europe, and it would create a very
potentially
big
maybe they could have been the ones used in Paris? Is that what you're saying?
I hope this time it wasn't. But again, I think there are too many issues in Ukraine related to the people's security, not just to the national security, but to the individual security. And that's, again, to sum up, I do support their concerns, but I do not share such an opinion that there are too much attention paid by the president to someone else's tragedy.
Okay, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting. I can't say it was a pleasure because I would rather discuss other subjects.
I agree. This has been Mr. Oleksiy Melnyk. He is one of the co-directors at a Ukrainian think tank called Razumkov Center. You've been watching Viewpoint on Ukraine Today.